Hey, what's up, everybody? Before I get to the episode with Tom Broback, I just wanted to apologize for hitting record a bit too late. Our podcast took place on a Friday night, and I'd been up fairly early. The kids in the middle of the night that weren't feeling 100%, and myself as well. I wasn't feeling 100% either, and wasn't really with it as much as I normally am, or I was a bit fatigued and whatnot. So this podcast took place in the evening time, and it was just a little foggy and whatnot. But anyway, just want to give you a little heads up there, and I'm still getting the hang of the whole podcasting game. So for next time, I'll make sure that I hit record on time so that you can hear everything that took place. But overall, really good podcast. Really enjoyed sitting down and talking with Tom for a little bit and getting his perspective from a physical therapy standpoint about training. So hope you enjoy the show.
And then one third is your older population, total knees, things like that. So I see a variety of stuff throughout the day, which actually really helps, because then you have a ton of energy for the younger kids, and then you get some adult conversations with the older people. So keeps me balanced, keeps me happy. It's been so living in Minnesota, I've always been here. I've always wondered what it'd be like to live out west or out east. And maybe I'll have to do that sometime. But right now I'm stuck in the Midwest. Or not stuck. I choose to be in the Midwest, and I like it. It's good.
So you went to school in the Twin Cities somewhere?
I did. So I went to there's Division III school, St. John's, in Minnesota, and then I went to University of Minnesota for physical therapy school. Oh. So I was in Minneapolis for PT school, and then have lived in either Minneapolis or St. Paul basically ever since. If you're ever in Minnesota, let me know.
Yeah, man. I've been through that airport the past couple times.
Okay.
I think twice in the past 6 months.
Okay.
But man, just the airport, you can spend quite a bit of time there. It's really nice and clean and huge. So I don't know, but yeah, man. So did you make your way down to Gopher's weight room at all when Dietz?
Oh my gosh! Like so when I was in physical therapy school, I did not know who Cal Dietz was, which believe it or not. And when I got out of school, I started reading stuff on trifecta training, on RPR, and obviously Cal Dietz's name came up. And I was like, wow, this guy does a lot. I wonder where he works. And it's like, oh, University of Minnesota, I've been there a while, works a lot of sports. And then always made an effort, or always tried to make an effort to get down there, and it just never happened. And then with COVID and whatnot, it hasn't happened yet. But he is a wealth of knowledge. I've heard him speak at several conferences. I went down to Track Football Consortium in Iowa this past summer, and he talked down there, and the levels his brain gets to is just unbelievable with how he thinks about programming and athletics and the weight room. And so he's been especially at the RPR side, he's been a big influence on me. Are you a big fan of him?
Yeah, man, I love his stuff. I think I read the triphasic book, in like a week, because I just couldn't pull myself away from it, because it was just a different way of looking at training, and then the RPR, I did that level 1 aspect in the past year sometime, and started implementing it with my athletes. And it looks, and I warned them ahead of time, I'm like, it's going to look goofy, but just trust it. And you test it out on guys, and you're like, look, I don't know if you can feel this, we're going to push here, pull here, and we've got pretty big asymmetry. So at the end of the day, if you spend less than 2 minutes and you think it's BS, whatever, we're out 2 minutes, who cares? But what got my attention with that RPR stuff is the number of soft tissue injuries they saw.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really jumped out at me. So
I've heard that from so many coaches where they'll go down to zero. We had 0 soft tissue injuries this year, and that's just unbelievable. Whether you're a high school program, college program, or obviously in the pros, it's amazing to decrease those injuries, because kids the best, ability is availability. And when you're in high school, at least for me, so my sophomore year, I broke my foot or broke my ankle in football in the second week of football. And then I had a hernia in basketball. So for almost like half the year, half of the sports calendar, I wasn't able to play or I was coming back from injury. And then also my senior year, our quarterback tore his ACL. And when you're in high school, like quarterback's a big part of your team. And so half of my, my sophomore year and senior year was really affected by injuries. So anything to help decrease injuries makes a big impact on me because I personally went through it. And I see so many athletes, their careers are shaped and defined whether or not they get hurt or not. And if something like RPR, it's really simple, really easy to learn. If kids benefit from it, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another course I went to down in Albuquerque called DNS. And, like you're in this real small group, there's like 12 people and an instructor. And, you're reading the slides and watching the stuff. And the whole time you're just like, I don't know. And then, you're following the path. And it's like, all right, I can see how this ties in. This makes sense. And, I stack that right after we do the RPR. We do a general warm up, then RPR, and then, we do RPR, then general warm up, then DNS. But yeah, man. I mean, there's just so much that we don't know, and it's just, I don't want to say discouraging at times, but you're like, yeah, I'm very certain about this, and then
right.
And then like a year later, somebody looks at something new, and you're like, okay. I need to reevaluate what I thought I knew. It's just
it is a blessing and a curse, right? Like you want to be confident, you want to be on top of your game, you want to know everything that's out there. But the hard part, it's like always changing. So you can never be still for too long. You always have to be reading research, talking to other coaches, trying new things. But so much opportunity to grow, to get better, to learn from others, to help educate other people. But it is tricky, right? You want to be, hey, this is the best program in the world. And 6 months later, it's like, wow, I didn't even think of this concept, or someone brought it up in a different way. And now I have to utilize it more because it's a better option. Yeah. And I think if we just stick to what we always do, to some degree, that's not very good because, 6 months ago, I probably didn't know everything and I don't know everything now. But if you keep learning, keep growing, that's a sign of being a really good coach.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like there's a book I'm reading right now called What Doesn't Kill Us. And it's by Scott Carney. And it dives deeper into like Wim Hof and all the stuff he has going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amazing, man, because Wim Hof is just challenging, what we think we know about the body. And like, hey, if we give it this stimulus, we have a high degree of certainty that it's going to elicit this response. And then a guy like Wim Hof comes along and they give that dose and they don't get the response they intended.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, well, why is that? And then they dive in and test. And it's like, all right, well, we need to completely reevaluate what we thought was like basic physiology. And, just in reading this book, man, like I'm only like about halfway through it. There's so much that I've learned this week of just, how the body will, utilize fat for heat, and it's different among different cultures, throughout in different parts of the world. But anyway, bit of a tangent there.
I think no. I think one interesting thing is we kind of assume everyone reacts and responds like I do. So I respond very well to sunlight and to heat. So I really like saunas. I like being outside. I like summer. I like doing that stuff. Other people respond better to cold, or they respond better to different stimulus. So we're all wired a little bit different. We're all a little bit unique. Someone in North America might be very different responder than someone who's in Asia or Australia. So I think assuming everyone is going to react the same is it's a common, like, easy thing to fall into, right? And a lot of your friends and family are probably similar to you and they have similar experiences. But once you start meeting other people who've had different experiences or respond in different ways, I think that opens up our brain to, hey, not everyone is the exact same. Kind of like with what you're talking about with Wim Hof. Like, oh, this guy responds differently. Why is that? Do other people like that? How do we get to that? And what does that tell us about our assumptions of humanity?
Yeah. Yeah, because in the book they're talking about, if you look at Inuit population, there. So I can't remember exactly, but I think it was their culture requires a high amount of dexterity. So their body will sit at a slightly lower core temperature, so that the extremities can have the blood flow, so that they can have the dexterity necessary.
Oh wow, yeah,
to go about their daily lives or whatever. Whereas I can't remember the other population that they compared it to, but the other population did not require the dexterity. So the body shunted the blood from the extremities and kept the core at a slightly higher temperature. Both exposed to cold, but two entirely different responses. And you start thinking about it, and you're like, okay, is this cultural? Is this regions of the world? What is going on? And then just from a conditioning standpoint, like how conditioned are you to heat or to cold or to whatever? But yeah, the chapter I just read, they were diving into people with autoimmune disorders and diseases, and how the cold is such a shock to their system that it forces them to quote unquote wake up or focus on those parts of their body. But anyway,
is that like a survival mechanism?
I'm not sure. I need to read more into that. But there's a guy in there with Parkinson's who's talking about he's had Parkinson's for 14 years, and he does this daily breathing routine and daily ice baths, and it's just such a shock that he has to focus on what he's doing, and then for some reason it helps him limber up. And I don't know. It's just I don't think it's a one-off. I don't think it's a one-off outlier situation. I think there's, as we see more and more people dive into this and do it, we'll probably see more stories that are similar to this.
That ties in a little bit to what we first started talking about with the being present, right? And I think some of these, they're definitely not new, but they're becoming more popular, I should say. Whether it's ice shower or cold shower, ice bath, sauna, even isometrics in the gym, different stimuli that require your full attention and presence, and we're getting these alterations in emotion and psychology and mental states. And I think that's just really cool that we can do that in a safe and productive way that has benefits to our body, to our mind, but also pushes us to think about, what are the limits to humanity?
Right. Yeah, that's one thing I'll talk to guys about all the time is I think a lot of people underestimate how plastic the body is, so it'll become whatever you force, whatever, outside forces you impose on it, or, even environmental, the body's going to figure out a way to adapt, so it's just interesting to see what people are doing, and especially with how much communication is possible. I think it's just going to get better and better and better.
And that adaptation takes time. I think people want everything now, right? But if you have, and I see this all the time in physical therapy, people come in, their shoulder's been hurting for 5 years, and they want to be better by Saturday. And it's like, even if you do all your exercises every day until Saturday, it's still going to take time to undo all of the neglect and lack of strength and motion that your shoulder might present with. It's going to, and people's perception of time, it's, looking backwards, it's like, oh, like 6 months ago, that wasn't that far, but 6 months from now, that's forever away. If you give it, weeks, months, years of working on a certain task, you're going to see that change. And then it'll take longer for those adaptations to go away. So like with building strength, you see this all the time. Guys who go to the gym, they get stronger, they get stronger, they get stronger. And then they can keep that strength for a long period of time without having to put in as much volume because they've built themselves up so much. And I think it's a good reflection for how do we be patient with making those changes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing where I'll talk to guys about, like the residual training effects and how long those training effects stick around for. Because everybody, especially the types of guys I'm working with, where they'll think, oh, I need to do more, I need to go harder, harder, harder.
Right.
It's like, no, you don't. You're actually going to see a performance decrease. And I don't know how many guys I've had a conversation with where it's like, cut your volume in half, go to the gym half the times that you're going, and I bet you'll see a performance increase. And lo and behold, it happens every time. It's because their body is resting and recovering. But yeah, there's something you said a moment ago, like about injuries and people want to be better right away and whatnot. Have you noticed that people almost tie their identity to their injury?
Like 100%. Yep. They'll say things like my tear, or if they get an MRI or they get an X-ray, they like know that back and front. They don't know exactly what it means, but they know that they have a disc issue. They know they have something's wrong with the rotator cuff. They know their meniscus doesn't look great. They definitely tie themselves to that to some degree. And I think a lot of people really do want to get better, and they know that it's going to require a little bit of work. I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I should say that I've worked on is I'm here to show you the path and to encourage you to go down that path, because I think a lot of people just doubt like this is going to work. Like they know they need to put in some work. They know they need to get a little stronger, move a little bit better. They know they need more consistent. And there's just this little gap of knowing the information and then buying it and actually doing it. And I think so much of my job is A, let's make this simple for you. B, let's make it consistent. C, let's emotionally tie you to the process of wanting to get better. And hopefully that carries that knowledge of, hey, I know I need to do my squats. Hey, I know I need to do my stretches. Hey, I know I need to get to the gym 3 times a week this week. I think as a therapist, a big part of that is, can we modify their behavior and their thoughts and beliefs and end up with better outcomes?
So how do you go about educating people on that and getting them to shift their mindset? Is it a case by case situation where each case is different, or do you have a system that works for everybody?
It is. Oh, I wish I had one system that worked for everybody. That'd be nice. It is case by case. So there are some people, and I should come up with names for them. There are some people that they bring the motivation for me. They will do everything I say. They'll probably do double everything I say. They're going to show up early. They're going to have everything. Like, they are go-getters. And I have to kind of rein them back in because they're going to do too much, especially if they're post-surgical. They're going to run too soon. They're going to start squatting too soon. They're going to start throwing a baseball too soon, whatever it might be. So I have to rein them in a little bit. So that takes a acknowledgement of their work ethic, but also making them realize this is how you're wired and this is usually beneficial for you. But in this case, we have to tweak it and focus on the things that we can do now, not on the things that we can't do. Another portion of the population, you really have to tie in, why do you want to get better? And it can't be as simple as like, I want to go upstairs, or I want to get out of the car better. Like, those are daily tasks. Of course they want to do that, but you have to tie it into a deeper reason. And so it usually works really well if they are in a sport or activity, or B, they have a family member. They have kids they want to play with. They have a spouse. They have parents that they're looking after, and showing them, if you strengthen your quadriceps, it's going to allow your knee to work better, so you can play basketball this year. You can coach your kids' basketball team. You can take care of your mom or dad who might need assistance. And I think when they realize this is why I'm doing it, it's not the superficial, I'm trying to get my squat better. They're like, hey, I'm trying to live my life and do the things I want to do. And that can really help kind of with that emotional tie-in to improve the outcome of therapy.
Mm-hmm. So those are, as far as duration on getting people to shift their mindset. I would imagine, are you having people from, what's the shortest amount of time you'll have somebody to the longest that you'll have somebody?
Every once in a while, you kind of see it click right in front of you, and they realize you're right. They're like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and that's really cool. That I can't say that happens every day. Every once in a while, you just see it in their eyes where they're like, you know what? Like, I need to start doing this. I need to take care of my shoulder. I need to get better after surgery. I need to get back to my activities. Otherwise, it can take a while. Sometimes it never happens. They just don't show up. They don't do their exercises. They're late. They make excuses, and that's really hard because it's not. Exercises didn't fail them. My ability to get them to buy into the process failed, and so I have to get better than that. But sometimes it takes, it takes a long time to change behavior. And anybody who has ever tried to change your diet or start a new exercise or start reading more books or to get off social media more or get on it more, everyone knows this. It takes a long time to change behavior, and it's something. It's really hard. Like as a therapist, if I see you once every 2 weeks and we do that for 2 months, that's not a lot of time together. So a lot of that has to come from their own ability to put in the work, to have someone help them put in the work, whether it's a parent or a coach or a mentor. But yeah, it's different for every person. And I think, again, at the end of the day, you have to understand, like, am I doing this for a higher purpose than any excuse that might come up? And then the ones that do usually end up doing really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point, people underestimate the power of small, like
100%.
Like for example, somebody wants to read more. All right, cool. Read 1 page today. Don't worry about trying to read a whole chapter.
Yep.
Because everybody bites off more than they can chew. And like I'll have conversations with guys about, like, we have change plates where we go, there's 55-pound rogue plates that go all the way down to 0.25 pounds. And, in addition to always chasing, better technical proficiency, it's like, hey, just put 0.25 pounds on each side. That's a big difference over time. Don't underestimate that. But a lot of it is just getting in people's heads about, like, being ruthlessly consistent and, sticking with and trusting the power of small, but yeah, man, I mean, it was my wife, she's an addictions counselor by trade, and
Okay.
she would work in, I think it's probably a year and a half-ish, maybe 2 years. She worked in the ER, and she would see people come in that had OD'd or, alcohol poisoning or whatever. And once they got them stabilized, and, she would come in and talk to the people and say, hey, introduce herself and say, hey, do you want help? Like, that's the first question. And the number of people who said no would just blow you away.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Because you have people who are not interested in changing their behavior.
Sure.
They identify themselves as, well, I am such and such an addict, and I'm just going to come back here again whenever. They're not that. So that's always an interesting question to me, is like, how do you get people to change? What's the driver?
That's so hard too, because you can only, as a healthcare provider, at some point you can only care as much as your patients do. And if they're not willing to change, or if they're not willing to show up, or if they have other priorities in life, you kind of have to let that be. And you can try as hard as you can to change it. And I applaud everyone who does. But I think that's the hard part, is like, we like that control. Like we're all helping, we're smart, we're educated, we're caring. But it's really hard, and you probably know this as a parent, to, you want to control someone's behavior and you can't. At some point, they got to put in as much as you are, if not more. And it's a hard thing to watch, especially in that situation where that's really life and death situations there. Physical therapy, the nice part of PT is no one really gets, one dies. So an outpatient, at least, everyone, they'll come back. Nothing we're going to do is life or death. But when you're working in the ER, it's life and death stuff. It's really serious. And that's a hard thing to manage when you're the one trying to help someone.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, and it's kind of funny, with my kids, because it really is me like trying to figure out what makes one tick doesn't work for the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So I can say, hey, if you do X, you will get Y, and 6-year-old doesn't care. The 3-year-old is totally like, all right, cool. I'll go do it. But, and sometimes like even coming down to discipline doesn't work the same for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny to watch and try like trial and error each day for me, and same with my wife. She has to try different things each day because they're changing so quickly,
Have you read Extreme Ownership?
Yeah.
I figured you would, but that book, when I was the content of the book just really changed how I approach like a situation like that. So in the past, I would just blame one of the kids, like, hey, this kid's just not disciplined. They're not listening to me. But with extreme ownership, I think you really have to ask yourself, what can I do different? What can I do better? Am I giving 100%? And not definitely not judging your parenting, but in most situations, for a lot of us, there's more we can do. There's more we can be prepared. There's more we can check in with. There's more research we can do. And that has really helped me a lot in the last several weeks, several months, even over the course of the year. When I have a question for somebody, or if I see something I don't like, I really ask myself, like, what more can I do? So if I have a question on how to treat a rotator cuff injury, have I even looked up the research on, what's the standard protocol? Have I talked to enough people before just going to my mentor and saying, like, hey, how do you do this? Like, have I done the work? And usually there's more work to be done. And I think the people that embody that are really successful in life.
Yeah. Like, how have I exhausted all options, and you can just hear Jocko's voice, like, it's all your fault. You are, everything in your life is your fault. And I mean, like, it's honestly a great concept because, outside of like freak show accidents or whatever, but I mean, people just don't want to, I think by and large, a lot of people don't like to admit that, they have to be accountable for their actions, and, everything that you do or don't do comes with consequences, good and bad, because people want to do a lot of stuff, but then not have to answer for them later. As an example, like with nutrition, people, man, I would love to eat Taco Bell every day, but I don't want to have heart disease and be more susceptible to cancers.
We were just talking about, you can now. I think we were just talking about, I think it's Taco Bell. They just added a subscription model for $10 a month. You get a free taco a day. So that might be right up your alley.
All right. So there is a Taco Bell close by. Subscription Taco Bell.
New sponsor for the podcast, huh?
Yeah.
TV.
What's up, Taco Bell?
Going back to excuses, though, I found this a lot with when I'm running late to something, I tend to blame the people I'm with, or I blame traffic, or I blame my car, or I usually blame something else. And in reality, usually there's something I could have done. I could have prepared the night before. I could have packed the night before. I could have left 10 minutes earlier. I could have checked the weather. I could have checked traffic. I could have had my notes ready to go. That is one situation where I've definitely felt like this is usually when I'm running late, it's something I could have done better to avoid that situation.
Yeah. Like, perfect example. Like I was running late, for this podcast, like a little bit ago. And, the whole time I'm just kicking myself because I'm like, man, what the hell? Why didn't I check this place out first to make sure that it had everything? Because here I am out here in my little garage, the lab. I mean, it works, but like, I was like, all right, I'd rather be in a heated building drinking warm coffee right now. But due to my lack of preparation, I'm scrambling around like, hey, sorry, I'm running late. And I'm just kicking myself, But it goes back to that Coach K, where preparation was one of his keys to success, man. And you look at him, Saban, all those great coaches, man, and they're just preparation masters. And I don't know.
I'm excited to see on Monday. So Alabama plays Georgia again.
Yep.
I'm really excited because last time they played a game like this, Jalen Hurts got benched at halftime and Tua came in, and I think there was a lot of preparation for that moment because I assume in that locker room they knew this might happen at some point throughout the season.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see if something like that happens again for either team, where you can prepare the best, but did you prepare for the worst situation possible where you're down, you're not playing well, and you need to make a dramatic change? And the teams that tend to have those things prepared, like the Sabans and the Belichicks and Gino Auriemma, they usually tend to be successful over the long term.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about at work with, when the Tua substitution happened. It's like, man, first of all, putting a freshman in that spot, that's at first you'd think any other coach does that, you're like, dude, you're crazy. Nick Saban does it, you're like, all right, he must know something. But then the second point is, what's that say about the level of talent that's coming through now? Like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, like Michigan. I mean, they can bench any of their starters, and their second strings are just as good.
That part's pretty crazy, right? And same with my brothers and I were just talking about Ohio State, where last year, if you look on their roster, they had Fields was starting, Stroud was a backup, and Jameson Williams was at Ohio State, and they had 2 or 3 other guys. So over the last couple of years, they have guys who are MVP of the Rose Bowl and things like that, and or wide receiver of the year, quarterback of the year, things like that, or guys up for the Heisman, and they have those guys waiting in the wings. So it's amazing how. And that goes back to time. It goes back to the adaptations that we just talked about. It takes time to get to that point. People want it to happen overnight. But if you put in, for those programs, decades of success, you're afforded that talent and that luxury, and you still have to work hard to make the most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people they don't realize how, like, each level of athletics that you go up, there is a clear distinction between the level of skill and talent. And it becomes more and more obvious the closer you get to the pros. Like, you'll see it a lot with D1 guys when they make the leap to the professional, whether it's NBA or NFL or whatever. You see them go in there and they struggle their first year because they're not used to the speed change. And it's like, yeah, man, it's just a different game. These pros that you're playing with now have been doing this for 10, 15 years in some cases.
Right.
And like, LeBron's freaking 37 years old, man. And what did he drop the other night? 43 points?
I saw him play a couple weeks ago. He was up in Minnesota, and it absolutely amazes me year in, year out. He's at his absolute best. He does everything he can, it seems like, to take care of his body, take care of his mind. He switched teams a couple times, but just always seems like he's putting in his best effort year after year at the highest of levels. and it's really cool to sit back and watch that. Especially for someone like me who I was born in 91. So, Jordan was coming up through early 90s, and I didn't get to experience that. So I kind of tell people this is my Jordan is LeBron, because I didn't get to experience what it was like. And it's different. The Last Dance was awesome. It was so cool to learn some of that stuff. But when you grow up in an athlete, and he's been, elite for as long, almost 2 decades now, it's just really cool to see.
And that really speaks to, performance as a whole, not just in the weight room, not just with sports psychology, but, nutrition, rehab, and it goes on and on and on. Now you have dedicated experts within each specific field. Mm-hmm. And these guys that are investing the money can stay in as long as they want. Well, not as long as they want, but they can stay in for a much longer period of time, because you look at James Harrison, Tom Brady, LeBron, all these guys who invest serious money into their body, and everything's taken care of. It's like, yeah, man, you listen to what these guys are saying, you do the work. Who knows what the limits are at this point?
One of my favorite things to look up on social media are quarterback coaches now. It's such a specific niche, but there's so many of them, and there's a lot of good ones. And it's obviously it's a high profile position in a high profile sport, but it's so cool to see that niche just blossom in the time and space that we have now with social media, with the money going into sports. And if you have played the position, know a lot about it, know how to make other quarterbacks better, you can make a living off that. So that's kind of one niche that I found a little bit lately. That's, wow, this is really cool. Growing up, you hear about like one or two of them, and but now there's just dozens on my feed every day, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, man. Who was the? Oh yeah. We were talking. So there's a physical therapist that works in my office, and he's just right across the hall.
Sure.
So we'll talk quite a bit about what's going on with our athletes and everything, and we were talking about ACLs the other day, and it used to be in like the 70s or 80s, like an ACL, it's probably like a career-ending thing, or
right.
At least it's going to be a damn long time before you get back to play. And now it's like, yeah, we're just going to poke like 3 holes in your leg, and you'll be out the same day and back to play much, much quicker. Like, it's just a whole different deal now.
Well, you saw it with Joe Burrow this year. He tore his last year. And he'll be ready to start next season. It's like, oh, I guess they're just ready to, and then he had an awesome year. Definitely came on the last couple of weeks. But you see it with these other guys, Chris Godwin and a couple other guys, they get hurt, and then like, here's the 9-month mark, and we can expect them to be back full go. And do they have a little, maybe a little lapse in play for the first couple of weeks or so? Maybe, but next season you expect them to be back. It's so cool to see that that therapy is advanced in that realm, especially for a severe injury like an ACL, because that is one of the longer injuries to come back from. And it seems like we're getting better. We're not perfect, but we're better at it.
Yeah. We've got an Alter G in our rehab room. I mean, what is it? You can offload. I think you can offload like 100%, but I mean, you can take it. You can start at 100%, go all the way down to body weight.
Yeah,
and run in that thing. So I mean, it gets the joint moving. As soon as the PT thinks it's okay to do whatever protocol. I mean, that's not my scope, but I'll be in the room when I'm watching kind of what's going on. So.
It gets that buy-in from the athlete or the active person trying to get back to running too. That, hey, I can do this a little faster than I normally could on my own. So we have this cool equipment. And they start feeling better. They start they're always smiling on it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I haven't done this in a while. And they want to, push it. Hey, let's do more next time. Let's do less body weight. And that is again, there's so many unique things in therapy that bring that kind of like joy and experience to the athlete of, hey, I'm feeling like myself again. This is actually pretty cool. We're done doing leg raises and band exercises on the table. Now we're doing the fun stuff.
Yeah. But, well, hey, man, I don't want to take up too much more of your time or anything, but where's are you active on social media? Like, where can people reach out to you, find out more about you, and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Great question. I am pretty active on social media, mostly as of right now, mostly on Twitter at Tom Broback. I do have an Instagram handle at Tom Broback as well. You'll find content there. So yeah, the biggest thing, I'm just trying to help coaches keep their athletes happy and healthy. I do that in person physical therapist right now. And I also have a podcast as well, Tom Broback Podcast, where I talk to coaches, trainers, therapists, sport coaches, strength coaches, a lot of different people on how we can make sports performance world a better place. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, want to know more about me, feel free to reach out. I'm pretty good at replying. And thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to see your future content as well.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. And had a good visit with you, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Yeah.